in the mining sector. We're joined this morning by Johan Olivier. He's from Webber Wentzel. Johan, good morning. Thanks for coming in on this Friday morning. Now, we're just looking at the various announcements we've had in recent weeks, various mining houses saying they're going to have to, they have no other choice but to cut the workforce. Are there other options? Because we also have Mining Minister Gwede Mantashe saying that they should look for other options. What are the other options out there?
Well, the first thing we have to realize is that we're part of a profit-driven world economy. We're just not isolated here and we do our own thing. So every company that's listed has to make profits for its shareholders. It's got to look at its assets. It's got to manage those assets to the best it could. And it's got to deliver a result. You know, they invest a lot of money, the investors. People who buy those shares want a return on investment. So the CEO and the board has to then look at that asset, and if there is problems with the cost, the rising costs, that it has problems with, you know, for instance, not having enough grade or sufficient grade to in fact make a profit, then it has to consider that and it has to cut its costs. And labour costs, unfortunately, is one of the greatest portions of that cost base. So it then leads you to decide, should I cut costs? And one of them is labour, and that means retrenchment. So it's not a decision that's arrived at lightly. And a lot of thought goes into that, and it's a last option because you get confronted. You have to justify why you are retrenching people. You have to go through consultation process in terms of the Labour Relations Act, and also in the mining industry you have a secondary obligation in terms of MPRDA, where you have to report this to the minister, and then the minister has set up a committee that then questions the mine. Aren't there other alternatives? How can we avoid this? So there are two parallel processes that now will take place in each of these retrenchments, the Impala and also Lonmin retrenchments, now also Goldfield.
Well, the minister's saying that now Goldfield stands a risk of breaking the law with this move. How so?
There's no question of that. The issue is you have statutory obligations, as I've just said. If you intend to retrench people, the Labour Relations Act says you have to follow a process. You have to involve the trade unions. You've heard Mr. Machunja the other day saying about Impala that, you know, it will stop it through strike action. That is one of the possibilities in terms of that process of consultation. If they can't reach consensus, then the union can also go out and strike at that mine to oppose the retrenchments. But a parallel process, as I say, is a process with a DMR and Minister Mantashe and his committee, who will in fact interrogate these reasons. Why are you retrenching? So it's not a clear-cut process that you just implement. You have to go through a number of procedures.
So does it seem like Goldfield has not done its due diligence or gone through the process properly?
No, I don't think any big mining company who has to go through this process has not properly considered what its legal obligations are and then follow them to the letter.
Well, you know, I often wonder, just as a layman, as an ordinary person, when it comes to these retrenchments, and like you say, it is well thought out, but surely when you make an announcement, Johan, like something like over 13,000 people now have to go in one go, you obviously see this coming at some point. Does it have to come to the point where we say over 13,000 people, now that's it? Or is there something that, you know, over the years, maybe a staggered retrenchment or something like that, where it has to happen that way?
We have to consider that a number, like for instance Impala, they have been conducting a number of voluntary retrenchments. So the first thing you have to realize is that you have about 5,000, 3,000 people at one shaft, at one mine. So you have natural attrition. You can lose about 200 people through resignations and so on. So you can fill those positions. Then you can have voluntary retrenchments. So all of that is to try and keep your labour cost at a level that you can afford. If you then make the decision that you have to retrench even larger number, you've arrived at that very carefully, and then starts the process to look at alternatives. For instance, transfer people to other shafts of that mining group that makes money. For instance, in respect of Goldfields, it would be difficult. They only have a one shaft left in South Africa. But in Impala, you have a number of other shafts that you can transfer to. There are also capital projects that they start with, so people could be transferred there. So the starting point of 13,000, for instance, at Impala, in the end result, it will probably be a much lesser and smaller amount of people affected.
Well,
because you would have looked at alternatives.
And government also saying, Johan, that they noticing that companies don't meaningfully engage with department on their restructuring plans. Like you said earlier, you know, that needs to happen. What could government actually do? What would the department actually do to change things? What difference would it make?
The problem is that the mines work in an incredibly burdensome regulatory environment. The government has got the MPRDA, the mining charter. They have to comply with that. It's layers of cost on the existing cost. High electricity cost of services are higher. All the unions are demanding higher wages. You know, they don't want to just 7% or 6%, which is related to inflation increase. They want much more. So the costs are just increasing all the time. So the poor CEO and his board is under huge pressure to make that mine profitable. Now, if the government wants the company to maintain that loss-making shaft, it will have to give it some incentives to keep going. And I'm thinking government starts to lessen that burden, give them incentives like tax breaks and incentives to, for instance, exploit that mineral at a much cheaper price to keep it going.
Okay, let's hope they can find a way, some way. Thank you very much for your time, Johan, Johan Olivier from Webber Wentzel, just looking at what options mining houses have other than retrenchments. Very few, it seems.